trust me, all the soft skills that come with nursing are going with you. They're not staying behind. It's not a separate you, it's the same you, just creating another path.
Welcome to Nursing Beyond the Bedside. I'm Audrey, your host, and a nurse who pivoted my path several years ago. After 8 years as a critical care nurse, I was ready for change. I craved higher pay and more flexibility, but was struggling to find a clear path forward. Fast forward through positions in recruiting, customer success, and marketing, and many lessons learned along the way. Today, I run Pivot Path, a company dedicated to empowering nurses to redefine their careers. This podcast is designed to help you navigate the journey from clinical bedside nursing to a fulfilling career that aligns with your passions and goals. Here, you'll discover inspiring stories from nurses who've gone beyond the bedside, successfully transitioning to non-clinical roles, or redefining their nursing career. Join us as we hear their stories and share actionable strategies to help you make your own leap. Whether you're a new listener curious about what lies beyond the bedside, or a returning audience member in need of some fresh motivation, this podcast is your go-to resource for exploring new opportunities that can transform your career. Let's get started. And today we are here with Georgette. Georgette is a holistic health and wellness coach practicing online and in person. She coaches people who are ready to take action into the next best version of themselves. Her rich nursing background lends heavily into her system. Georgette is author of Coming Back to My Body, and she is a speaker and moderator as well. Georgette, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Audrey. I'm glad to be here. I'm excited for this. Let's
go. It's so great to have you. Let's start at the very beginning of your story. I know that, we want to talk a lot about your coaching and your philosophy, but let's start with how you got there. Tell us about your early career and when you first became a nurse.
Oh, yes. Very interesting story. So I grew up, when I was little, I was the sick child in the house. I was quite sickly. And I say that, and then people meet me in person. I'm this chunky person, and they go, "What?" Yes, I was a sickly kid, but I ate well. My appetite was never a problem when I was not feeling well. And my dad, lucky to have my dad's friends as doctors, and so I basically had concierge medicine when I was a child, growing up in Cameroon, West Africa. So they would come to the house, just check on me, even when my dad was not feeling well. Anybody. We rarely went to the hospital. So since I was the child that felt sick quite often, I was surrounded by, I had blood draws. I was going to clinics all the time and things like that. And so it just, just kind of built up and fascinated me how they could poke me and pour this giant liquid coming from a bag, and I feel better in like 24 hours and I'm eating my favorite food, type situation. And so I think that's where the whole interest kind of got in. So as a child, it was, doctor sets with the stethoscopes and the body parts and the things, all my dolls were my patients, you know. And so it was just one of those things where they're like, oh, okay, that's going to be the doctor of the family. Because, I was pretty much in and out of clinics and hospitals all the time. And fast forward to, finishing high school, I was tired of school. I just was. And my dad's friends in France said, hey, we'll sponsor her through med school. No big deal. I went, I'm not going to go to another 7 years of school. I did not want to do that. So when the opportunity came for me to come to the US to study nursing, I jumped right on it. And by my junior year, I noticed something was that the doctors were so busy that they didn't have time to really, I didn't see them enjoy life. I knew they had the nice cars and houses and had all the expensive trips, but they really didn't seem to have a life. And I thought, well, I hit the jackpot with this because I really wanted to be a mom. I wanted to be a surgeon. But I also knew I want to know if my child is hurt or my family member is hurt, and people not keep it away from me until 8 hours later when I'm doing a crazy surgery to now find out my child broke their arm or my significant other passed away, all the dramatic, crazy things that go through your head. So I think that's where I fell in love with it even more, because then I experienced mostly, even though my dad's friends were the doctors, I experienced the nurses a lot as well, where they were nice and they were sweet and, that whole situation. So it was not hard to fall in love with it. It was just part of the whole medical field where I thought, oh, I can latch onto this now. It's not too much school.
Yeah.
And it's not costing me $500,000 or more, type situation. So that's how I got into it. So I started out, while I was going to nursing school, I was a CNA. I enjoyed that as well, because just, you kind of gain confidence when the nurses start figuring out that they can let you empty a chest tube or, record a drain. And then they were so nice because I think I was also very open to learning, and I would ask questions. I was eager. So they'd
Right.
say, hey, describe the color of, whatever is in the drain. And I'll try to describe it and this, that, and the other. And they'll correct me as I went along. And so by the time I was graduating nursing school, they were so used to me. I started doing IVs. They would stand there, but at least just allow me to just do nursing things.
Yeah.
So by the time I actually started working on the floor, I started out in cardiac telemetry. And so my preceptor was this lovely lady. She'd walk around with a cup of coffee and she goes, "You've been a CNA for a while." I said, "Ma'am, I'm a nurse now. Like, I need you to teach me." And she goes, "You already know the things." I said, "I know it here. I need it to transfer to physical
Mm-hmm.
skills. I need to take the information in my head and connect it to a situation." And she was awesome. She said, "Okay, here's the thing, critical drips and things like that." And I mean, as I've been a nurse, 17 years? And at that time, there were LPNs in the hospital. I don't know why they removed them, but there were LPNs in the hospital, and the LPN will come and say, "Hey, you have a critical drip to hang, blah, blah, blah." And the instructor will sit there, the CNA will sit there, and they're like, "Okay, what do you do next?" And I'm like, "Somebody help." And so it became, "Okay, what are you doing this for?" They walked me through it. It was beautiful, it was great. I gained a lot of confidence, right? Even with the confidence of speaking with doctors, because I know the first doctor that looked me in the face, he says, "You must be a new nurse." And I said, "Yes." And he goes, "There's a giant L on your forehead." Me and him
Oh,
became really cool after that. And that was it was like, I felt like that was the moment when I was like, okay, I am a nurse. So, but I've had lots of experience as a cardiac nurse, long term acute care, ICU. I've had managerial positions. I've done some psych. I did not like psych. That was not my favorite class. I did not care for it. I just wanted to pass nursing school.
right.
Fast forward, guess what happened? I am like the psych person. It's amazing how the nursing career will take you through loops and things like that. So it's been lovely, it's been rich, and I've had mentors who have ushered me and pushed me up the management ladder, the leadership ladder, encouraged me in a way that has benefited me not only, through my career, but, personally as well.
Yeah, it's amazing that you had some really good nurses or really good teachers along the way. That's so important. And I feel like nursing sometimes gets a bad rap for eating our young. And, sometimes it can be hard to find really good mentors within the profession. But when you do find a nurse in your path that, is really just there to help you along the way, to explain the why and how as you learn, it's so important.
Yes, very, very.
Later in your career, you also transitioned to kind of like a clinical liaison role. Tell me how that kind of first transition came to be.
Oh, okay. So I just had, my son was 2 years old. I found myself a single parent. And so my sister at that time was able to keep my son during the day. And, being a toddler, 2 years old, he did not have the terrible twos. He had the terrible threes, but he was still a 2 year old, and he would stop eating right about noon, between noon and 2 o'clock, until I got home. And then he tried to overeat, and then we have issues now because his tummy hurts, and then I have to hold him, and then I can, it just became this whole thing. And then my sister found a different job, and I had to find a babysitter. That was very difficult. I spent a lot of money hiring people through care.com. And then I said, okay, something's got to give. And I said, I have to get away from the bedside. And what gave me the confidence to do that was that I was a charge nurse. I've been a charge nurse. I've been a weekend manager. And so being able to critically think and manage people and not be so worried about my skills, because I trusted my critical thinking skills at that point, I said, well, I needed to find something that was within my scope, something I was not learning brand new. It was terrifying, but I cannot even remember how I first found that job as a clinical liaison, but I interviewed for it, and the director of business development was wonderful. And she goes, trust me, I get a whole bunch of you nurses coming off the floor with no idea of what's going on and this, that, and the other. She goes, repeat after me. When I tell you this is how you go and do a spiel, this is what you do when you go to a hospital to get someone to come to our rehab. This is what you say, this is what you do. Here's your territory, drive, teach you the whole thing. And then I was like, oh, this is marketing and sales.
Yeah. So
And
tell me, so that role was actually like, so you were the clinical liaison for a rehab facility. And so you would go out to like hospitals and basically pitch that facility to them to want to
correct,
get them to send their patients there for rehab.
correct.
Yeah, that is sales and marketing. Look at that.
It is. Yeah. And then you start doing the whole thing where you go to people's homes and you kind of sit there, the approach is different. And then when sometimes it'll be a family member who reaches out and says, I need them to leave a nursing home to another nursing home. And we're like, or sometimes the nursing home to the rehab. And so it was all these wonderful, crazy things that also did not keep me in a building for 12 hours.
Right.
I fell in love with that.
Yeah.
Being able to slow down and breathe and actually eat lunch. And lunch, I had an hour for lunch. And it was so relaxing. I could pick up the phone, call the daycare, check if my son was doing okay. And sometimes, if I'm going to one direction that is towards home, I can actually stop at the grocery store and grab dinner or grab anything. I could stop and breathe, and if something came up, let's say with mom or whoever, I could pick up the phone and not worry about, oh my gosh, I need to get on the phone right now.
Right. I know.
Because
Isn't that kind of crazy when you get that taste of like, wow, like I'm not stuck in this one building for usually 12
13,
and a half hours. Like, like I'm stuck within this one building. You never, I mean, to your point, we hardly ever get a lunch break. So it's not like we have time to make calls for ourselves during that shift. And so the freedom of being able to, even if it's just sprinkling in a little thing for ourselves here and there throughout the day, whether it's dropping off your dry cleaning or stopping by the grocery store or making that phone call, whatever it is, that added flexibility that comes with like being outside of a facility for your shift is really, really different.
it's a taste of a different kind of freedom. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? It's a taste of a different kind of freedom. And I remember during that time, I have family and friends in Europe who are also nurses, and they would tell me they had nap time and some of them had lunchtime, like a whole hour for lunch where they would leave the building.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
I went, wait a minute, what are we doing? You
Yeah.
know, it was just mind blowing how different, and I started kind of opening my mind up a little bit to how different niches of the nursing field function. That
Mm-hmm.
also opened me up to how insurance works and things like that, where then you do the whole clutching your pearls with what are they doing to us, and then you find out about big pharma and how it's connected to rehabs, and I mean it's just everything. I love to learn. I am a sucker for learning. I can nerd out on something when I want to, so it really helped that I had that already in me. So learning all these extra things just became second nature, where I'm like, why is this insurance denying this? And then you on the phone with someone and they're telling you, well, but because of this, that, and the other, and then you realize I'm an advocate
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
fight for your patients. Best feeling ever. So
And that, to your point, like the whole like interworkings of the healthcare system and everything that can impact patient care, your next role, I believe you went on to be a case manager, right?
yes,
So you were more and more hands-on with all of the different pieces that have to come together to facilitate someone's care.
yes. And when I did the clinical liaison, I worked with a lot of case managers as well. But then once I became a case manager, the relationship with the hospitals, within that, 20-mile radius, that was the biggest. The big hospitals were within a 20-mile radius. And we get to talking, and then I will work with those case managers because they have to learn, they have to discharge people.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're at the bedside, all you do is, oh, my patient, the doctor has written orders. We call for the doctor, hey, we need orders to discharge this person. And we fill out all the paperwork and send these people off. The case managers have done their work. They've done the extra things for wheelchairs or, long, like home antibiotics. They've already done all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And my job as a bedside nurse is just to sign off, teach them a few things, and send them off. So having also that experience to know and kind of learn, I learned about my community so quickly. The resources that were there and not
Yeah.
there, and what we were struggling, what I could do. I've had the governor send their assistant to help adjust, work on something. I've had the governor sign off on something
Mm-hmm.
that helped my patient one way or another, whether it was when I was a director of admissions at a nursing home, that in particular. But to have all these entities come into play that are legal, that are political, that are financial, to just come together, have those conversations with them, kind of, it was just like this mind blowing experience that I had. So then I found different parts of myself as a nurse that even while I was doing these away from the bedside roles, I was still heavily in, acute care facilities, long-term care facilities, where if something came up and they said, is there a nurse available? I was there. I
Yeah.
still started these. I still help transfer people. I still help clean people, even though, it was not my role per se, but I was there to even guide sometimes. And they're like, well, you're here, help, stretch your arm or hold this thing or whatever this, and I'll be like, no, the tube is kinked, let's do this. And I'm still a nurse, but I get to see it now from a different angle and help in a different way.
Totally. And to your point about getting to be a advocate for your patient, in that case manager role, like you are the one who is like really roping together all of the resources for them. And it's not just going to call, when you're a bedside nurse, it's not just calling pharmacy and bugging them about the medication you haven't gotten yet. It's making sure that their meds are set up at home. They have all of their, like, they have a way to get to their appointments. They've got their outpatient things set up. So you've got a lot to do to make sure that your patient is going to be taken care of once they leave the hospital. Every nurse I talk to, they're like, I'm always a nurse. I'll always still be a nurse. And I think that that's really cool that as a profession, we bring that to everything we do. We bring a lot of heart into our work. And so it's amazing to be able to find different ways to kind of channel that empathy and the fulfillment that like we get from being able to care for people.
It's wonderful, it really is. And for all the other nurses who are away from the bedside, we have our moments where I would step into like maybe an ICU and there's a new gadget, and I'm like, wait, it used to take me 30 minutes to find the reading for an A line to be accurate, and now it's showing me blood flow on the screen. Types. It kind of brings you back, and I'm like, I just want to wear scrubs again. And then, you see something, you go, mm-mm. Not because I don't want to, but
Right.
I love the role that I'm in right now, and for the time in my life, this is appropriate as well.
Absolutely. And that's what I love is that nurses can kind of find a way to channel their inner nurse that fits with the stage of life that they're in. It's not going to look the same way forever. I say that. Some nurses will probably work on the same unit at the bedside their entire career. And we need those nurses. They're like the gems on the unit that you can go to and ask any question and they're going to know the answer. But it is cool that, nursing is a versatile profession and you can, find different channels to do what you enjoy doing. Um, Talk to me about how you started considering coaching or how you even kind of like learned that coaching could be a potential career path for you.
So, my first case management job, my supervisor just one of those things just trusted me. And so what I would do is when I attend, because I'm in a niche, it's workers' comp. I used to be a field case manager, so I would go to doctor's appointments with them. And I started realizing how terribly people don't know themselves. They don't know, like the average person does not understand what is going on with them. They don't even know who they are and why what is happening, because Western medicine, as fabulous as it is, has given people a sense of it's a terrible codependency there, where, oh, I feel terrible, I'll just call the doctor. I feel bad, I'll just go to the doctor. So then now I'm sitting there with someone with broken bones, and they've told me everything that is going on with them, whether it's in their personal, because at this point I am way more detailed or intimate with my patients because it is not at the bedside. So whatever injury they sustain, it's affecting their personal life, from financial to marital, you name it. It's chaos for them. And so I will sit there with people and they'll tell me all these things and the minutiae of the injury, how it's affecting their life and they cannot pay their bills and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we go sit with the doctor. Doctor swoops in. Hi, I'm Dr. So and so. How are you doing today? Oh, doc, I'm good today. I started literally nudging people, or I'll give them a look like, that's not what you told me. Why didn't you tell the doctor what you told me? Well, it's no big deal, but this, that, and the other. My knee kind of pops, here and there, but I've been working since I was 13. I'm 65, blah, blah, blah. And then the doctor goes, that changes everything, you know? And I tell them, you have to know what ails you, what you've done to make it better, what makes it worse, and know exactly how to describe your ailments for the doctor to appropriately treat you. And I've heard people come, I would go to appointments with people who would be like, well, they're a doctor, they're supposed to figure it out. And I told this lady one time, I said, ma'am, this is your body. They are treating a specific thing, but this is your body. So when I have people like that, I started coaching them and I would tell them, so here's what you do when the doctor comes in, and there's some of them, they just breeze through. I said, slow the doctor down. It's their job to talk to you. Well, but I don't want them to be rude. I said, they're not going to be rude. I'm sitting there. I'll handle that. And some people will be scared, but there are many times where I've been like, oh, hold on, Dr. So I have a question. Even if it's irrelevant, I'll just ask just so I can cue it to the patient for them to talk and create that communication there
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. And then when they see that the doctor has slowed down enough, now they can speak. So being an advocate in that way, I realized that, my God, these people don't know anything about it. So when we get our patient history and do you have a history of diabetes, hypertension, all those things, and then you see that they're either inconsistent with their own care or they don't even understand why they're taking this much medication. There's some people on medications where my mouth dropped. I'm like, how are you walking around when your blood pressure is fine? You shouldn't be taking this much. And so what I would do is, okay, I'm here for you broke your neck, but your blood pressure medicines are too high. That's why you're lightheaded all the time. You don't need this much. So what I would do is I would cue the doctor, and then I'll teach them and I say, listen, if your blood pressure is at this level, do not take it, or you can split it however you want to do it, but make sure your PCP knows that this is what's going on. So when the people will come back and be like, oh my gosh, I feel so much better because you told me to do this. And then the people with back issues, which, most workers' comp is a lot of joints, backs, type situations, mostly ortho. And the trick is you need core strength, so you have to lose weight. And I would sit with the guys didn't care. And I would be like, well, your beer belly is there, and they'll joke about it. I had some men who'll be like, well, it pulls the ladies in or something like that, and they'll joke around. But the women were the ones who were more concerned, and they're like, but how do I begin to lose weight and this, that, and the other, and blah blah blah. And what I would do is create a plan for them just to start them on the journey to actually feeling better about, on average, work comp, depending on the injuries, like 3 months. So usually by 3 6 months, if the people have taken my advice, they generally felt better. The pandemic hit, and I was sitting there going, we're all itchy. We were stuck at home. We couldn't do too much. We were not socializing. And I said, you know what? Since I started this management job, I've not had a second job like I've always had at the bedside. And I kept, because one of the doctors was talking about you need a health coach, and I was like, I've heard about those because I know Walmart made a big thing about it like 20 something years ago. So I asked this doctor, I had a good rapport with him, and he said, yeah, it doesn't work. I said, what do you mean it doesn't work? Then he explained that it started out well, but then it just kind of fell through. They're not really as effective as the plan itself. So I went and looked into that. And 2021, January, I just clicked and signed up for coaching school. Didn't even think twice. I was just like, this is it. I've been doing this for people for how many years now? Why don't I just add that to my repertoire? I have the scientific background, I have the physiological background. I deal a lot with psychological issues. My psych patients, the moment they adjusted their food, I'm telling you, they felt better. So I went, this is like a no-brainer. Click, I signed up for coaching school.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, you're bringing in the whole philosophy of just holistic care. And like, it's not just this pain in your knee. There's probably all of these other things going on behind the scenes between your nutrition and your physical exercise and all of this. And I do think, like, as a society, and I think you were making this point as well, but as a society, it's like we always just want the quick fix. Like, yeah, my knee hurts, just give me the medicine to make it stop working and or stop hurting, and I want to feel better. I don't, we don't necessarily want to like dig into the rest of the whys. It might not be a quick and easy fix. It might take a little bit more of our time and attention to get better at, but those are generally the things that are going to make us healthier in the long run. Um, and so it's cool that you found this way of like, found yourself in this case manager role for workers comp, and you're there with these people and realizing that they don't fully understand what's going on with their own health and wellness. There are so many people who are on a med that can't really explain it to you or like why they're on that med. And I do think that like as a whole, it would benefit our healthcare system if we as providers got better at patient education overall. Um, I will say, it's hard when your patient load is really heavy and you're running around all day. I mean, you've worked at the bedside, I've worked at the bedside. We all know how that goes. I wish that I had the 30 minutes that it took to like really like thoroughly educate a patient as I'm like discharging them from the ER, but it's like 30 minutes is hard to come by, you know?
Yes, and those unique days when I was at the bedside where I could take time to educate my patients. It felt nice. It felt really, really good. And, I think I kept that in my mind. And I said, well, if you would, the moment you have just even time to sit. So what I would do is I might, if there are new nurses watching, we I did paper charting. Okay, you take your chart in there, and it's not been that long. So you take your chart in there, you're sitting with them, you're talking and you're writing and everything, and that way it's like you're doing your documentation as well. And so by the time you get out there, you're not trying to find another 10 minutes to sit down and document that you taught them about their medication or their follow up with the doctor or whatever the situation may be. And this whole coaching also came out because my supervisor, she said, well, there's a conference coming up here. Here's the topic. Go talk about it. I looked at her. I said, why me? You're the supervisor. You should be doing this educational talk. And she goes, no, you're younger. There, she was getting close to retirement. She goes, we need someone else. You're very personable. You speak well. People listen to you. And, why don't you just do the talk? So I did the PowerPoint, everything. She looked at it, signed off on it. And I was on the stage for the first time. And I did an hour and realized that I could hold a room together. I remember my mom sitting, my mom had to come, okay?
Oh.
Had her little chatterbox of a child finally has somewhere where she can just talk. So she sat there, and I found this out only after I finished the talk, because my supervisor was videoing, and she would turn to look at my mom, and she goes, "That's my daughter."
Oh.
Yes. So it's just things like that that make you realize that you have more value as a nurse, because whatever I talked about, I think the first one was about the different generations and how to kind of manage them at work, type situation. And it was great. People enjoyed it. It was lovely. This is before the pandemic. I had like people give me their cards. They're like, can you come to Tennessee to do this? We need you in Kentucky. We need you in West Virginia, and all that kind of stuff. And then the pandemic hit. So all those opportunities fell apart. But what ended up happening was my nerdy self just got even nerdier. And, I was the COVID person, the point person at work. I had the most COVID patients. I did a lot of the education. I did segments with everybody's conference wherever, just to talk about how to take care of COVID patients through work comp, because that was such a niche. We were navigating it brand new. So that was a lovely challenge for me. I read every article that made sense, that had really good numbers. I got better at statistics, at reading um, peer reviewed articles, and being able to really break them down and explain them and things like that. So that also helped in the fact that I was teaching all my patients about COVID while we were going through the pandemic. I talked to them, and at this point, I am such a homeopathic person because I grew up in the culture and in a family that was quite homeopathic. And so, because there were no set things that first 6 months, I, when I tell you my grandmother's repertoire of herbs and spices and teas, it was heaven. I got to practice that with my coworkers. They took concoctions I told them to make, and then I went to our accounts, and I took a basket of just citrus fruits and things like that and gave it to the accounts that allowed us to still come into their clinics during the pandemic. And so then they're like, what are we going to do with this? I'm like, here's a tea. You do this and you add that and put your honey, your cinnamon. If you want this, add some turmeric. If you did. So it just kind of woke up that dormant side, that homeopathic side of me, to where I think even with my COVID patients, I did so much education. I'm like, open your pantry. Tell me what's in your pantry. That's where the healing starts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so talk to me, so tell me a little bit about your business and how this philosophy kind of flows through into the coaching that you're doing now.
Yes. So I started coaching. I was excited about it. And, when you're begin on your entrepreneurial journey, you don't even think you're an entrepreneur. You're just happy that you know how to do something and you've helped some people. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to make so much money. This is going to be great. Everything's going to be fine. I'm going to just be living my dream. Because once you taste that freedom of having time to just hang out with your kid, having time to stop during the day to hug your friend who's in the hospital, having time during the day to be able to handle something that is not like left that came at you left field without having to sacrifice work time. It is so the freedom just kind of kept growing, and to think that I would be ever stuck for the till the day I retire at a bedside is not it just not was not a reality anymore. And so I started doing all that, and then my health started crashing. And then I realized I had a panic attack for the first time. I'm the nurse. I'm the one who helps people with panic attacks. I'm the one who holds their hand. I'm the one who recognizes it. But it's my sister on the phone going, "You're having a panic attack." And I went, "There is no way I have a panic attack." And then it hit me, and I went, oh my gosh, yes, I've been feeling all these crazy things happening, these changes. I'm pretty active. I'm currently training for a full marathon. I'm a runner. I like to go on walks. I like being outside and all these good things. I eat well. Why am I feeling terrible? And so I started digging. I started digging. And one day I broke down. That sense of doom was overwhelming. This is after the first panic attack, and I didn't know what to do. I went to the doctor. It's not IBS. My GI was off. I was foggy, couldn't sleep. I had started on a weight loss journey, but then again, I lost too much weight too quickly, so I was not happy with my body. I felt weak all the time. It was terrible. I felt really, really horrible. And I kept thinking, but I'm healthy. I know what to feed myself. What is this? I drove one morning, I called in. I just went straight to a Chinese doctor, and I just sat there and I just could not stop crying. And I'm like, I don't feel good. And she goes, it's okay. Little Chinese lady. She says, it's okay, I got you. So she did her assessment and everything. And I learned about chi. What do you know about chi, Audrey? We always see it in the movie, right? You're like, oh, that little warm glow in your chest, or, when you sit down in, lotus position. It's very dramatic in movies. So, but then my curious self, and I asked her to explain, and she started explaining to me what chi was. It's the life force within us, and this, that, and the other. So she realized that I was the kind of person who wanted to learn. So she goes, your lung chi is so weak. And she goes, you are very sad. And I said, no, I'm a happy person. I'm jovial. I'm generally in a great spirits and this and the other. She goes, your kidney chi is really weak. I said, what does that mean? She goes, there's a lot of anger you're holding on to. And I was like, this cannot be possible. And then she went to my pulse, everything, looked at my tongue and all that. I'm like, do your work. So I think maybe the second or the third session, I had the worst panic attack. I almost fell off the table. She had to pull the pins out and then stuck a pin on the top of my lip, and I immediately calmed down. That's when I felt relief. It's like I was floating. And I went, what is this? So then I dug into Ayurveda, which is generally from Asia. And because right now, at that point, I was just consuming traditional Chinese medicine, everything. I wanted to understand it all. I dug into Ayurveda. I'm from a homeopathic household. So then now me and my sisters are talking about it. And we're like, yeah, our grandmother used to do this. And, our aunt does that and blah, blah, blah. And we got our aunt to start writing down the herbs and the things she used to help people. So then you dig into Ayurveda, and then before you blink, you're in a Native American healing type things. And then I realized, I said, okay, I realized that I was not living in my own body. Then it helped me explain why my patients treated their bodies like it was a foreign entity. So the whole point of my business was to align you, mind, body, and spirit. Because You can do mind and body all day long, but if that spirit is not aligned as well, there is always going to be friction. And not that when you get aligned, you'll never get out of line. My business, my job, I named my business Evolve Fullness because I realized that we are in constant flow, constant growth. Whether we accept the growth or not, whether we participated within or not, we are in constant growth. And it is for us to get better. No matter what you do, life is happening for you. Negative or positive that has happened to you, there is a there is an alignment that has to happen somewhere. So that's the philosophy, is to just kind of keep you aligned, mind, body, and spirit, to regain balance and sustain happiness. Because a lot of times we put the price on happiness as this thing that we need to be living in constantly. But when I found my own alignment, mind, body, and spirit, it was easier to teach my patients to understand that, listen, there is a scientific part, there's a biology part, there's a metaphysics part to this, and I would call it out. I started calling it out a whole bunch, and I would say, listen, I understand that you broke your wrist and your blood sugars are out of control because now you're on steroids. But here's where this other issue is coming from. It's all somatic. I learned about the pain, depression, anxiety cycle, and I would teach my patients that. The moment I started doing the alignment things and the energy balance things, light bulbs. Everybody, light bulbs. Even the people who didn't want to do what I asked them to do, light bulbs. To where they would show up later and they go, you know what, you were right. I was just mad at this thing. That's why my back kept hurting. Do you know how many times I've uncovered a lot of pain issues that an injury has just kind of exposed? People get divorced when they get injured at work and they cannot work. People lose marriages, they lose kids, they lose custody, they lose their homes, they lose their cars, they have zero sense of self because our existence has always been about productivity, about the work that we do. So think about the 70 something year old man who came out of the 70s, started working at 13, never like really taken a day off in his life except for a few things here and there. And then now you're telling him he can't climb on the ladder. That is mind blowing. They lose their minds. There's no sense of identity when everybody's so attached to, even as nurses, like, oh my gosh, I'm a nurse. So even with that, I had to learn the word entrepreneurship to be able to say, I am an entrepreneur because I'm running a business. But to be able to also shift the culture of healthcare with my nursing background to say, you are more than your job. You are more than whatever label that society has placed on you, your family has placed on you, even the negativity in your head that has been placed on you. So that is where the philosophy comes from, is the fact that we are very detached from our bodies because we don't see our bodies as a whole. We see it as a separate thing. But the moment we come into alignment with our bodies, our minds and our spirits take over. Now we're a whole human being. And then we can actually start solving the problems that we have.
Interesting. Yeah. So it sounds a lot like I don't know if self-awareness quite covers it. Like that might only scratch the surface of kind of like
Yeah.
what you're describing here, but I think what resonates with me is that just like as a society, we move pretty quickly through life.
Yes.
Like we are always, to your point of being productive, like we're always doing something. We're trying to be productive. We're trying to do this. We're trying to do that. A lot of us, I think that something that I hear a lot from nurses who I'm coaching through Pivot Path is just that, they've taken steps in their career that kind of seem like the steps that they should take, the path that they should be on. And it's like, well, where does the should come from? Like, is that because that's what you want to do? Or is that because, we talk about once you're a nurse for a while, you should take the next step of being a nurse practitioner or a CRNA or something like that. And, it's hard to pause and slow down and really evaluate yourself. And it's, I think that what I'm saying is similar but different from what you coach. I think that what you coach, it sounds like, goes in on this to a much, much deeper level. But yeah, I think that there's so much value wrapped up in just pausing and getting to know ourselves and like really coming to understand, who we are. And I think that nurses particularly struggle with that. Like to your point of going nurse to entrepreneur, like so much of our identity is tied up in being a nurse. And I think that, that's probably similar but different from other professions. Like nursing has a lot, I think in nurses, we all share a lot of personality traits. Like we're generally empathetic, caring,
Yes.
we want to make a difference. And so it is to a certain extent part of who we are, but it's certainly not our entire identity. But I see how like if something in life comes in and kind of disrupts that, you're set spinning for a little bit until you till you slow down to really like kind of sort all of that out.
Hmm. And because even the transition from nurse to entrepreneur, which I'm still a nurse, I still have a day job. Y'all, I'm not yet making the millions that I want, so I'm keeping my day job until then. But it took part of what I also do, what I also coach, not directly, but indirectly with the people that I coach, is the fact that we have to shatter a sense of identity that no longer serves us.
Hmm.
And that is a scary, scary process.
Yeah.
Mine came through my health and entrepreneurship, where everything that I held dear to me, everything that I thought I knew and I was sure of, I had to question.
Yeah.
And being and leaving the bedside, that was not hard because I had a motive, my son. I needed to have time with him in the mornings and in the evenings. That was not a hard move. But the moment I started coaching and I realized and I started getting people send me text messages back like, oh my gosh, it was the best 12 weeks I spent with you, the best 6 weeks, or your 7 day jumpstart was amazing. I think I'm okay now. And then, I started getting excited about that. And I'm going, but this is for all of us humans. My nursing is for a specific thing. But what I'm doing is for all humans, for everybody. And for my brain thought we had to swap identities to where I abandoned nursing and focused on entrepreneurship as a holistic health wellness coach. And I struggled with that for about a year. And thank God I had the right kind of community of entrepreneurs to be able to talk to and say, but here's what I'm struggling with. I love being a nurse. The knowledge I am still a nurse. And I'm thinking, why do I have to abandon that identity?
Hmm.
It's still part of me, will always be part of me. My origin story as a
Right.
nurse. Like I cannot abandon that, but then I am becoming an entrepreneur. So I have to think differently. I have to think out of the box. I have to think about how to apply the nursing skills that I've gotten into this arena. And I think it took me about a couple of years for me to start settling into when people I go introduce myself. Hi, I'm Georgette. I'm a holistic health and wellness coach, and my business, this and the other. The moment I started saying it out loud, it started becoming real. But what I realized is that when I got back into alignment with myself, because last year, the theme of my year last year was alignment is the assignment. And then this year, somehow it just became the year of execution. So, so I think by the end of last year, I had gotten the balance between you're always going to be a nurse, you're an entrepreneur, you're a holistic, wellness coach. This is all you. It is slivers of you. So people are not always going to get the entire. Audrey, I'm talking to you right now. This is the Audrey I know. The Audrey who did NICU, some people know a side of you there. The Audrey, even in the same NICU, Maybe night shift knows you differently. When you go to the store, everybody knows you differently. Your family knows you differently. Even within your own family, there are slivers of you that each person holds dear that makes Audrey Audrey.
Yeah.
Once I started thinking about it like that, this is a sliver of who I am, not the entirety of who I am, because my nursing has been the entirety of who I was. So now I get to say I use my nursing background to propel people into the next best version of themselves.
Yeah, I love that. That the way that you
Mhm.
just laid it out is very clear, and I think that that's easy to understand because we can see it if we think about our relationship with other people. You know, like relationships are just so different from person to person and setting to setting. So I think that that's true. It all does build us into the whole person, but it is just a bunch of pieces that makes that up. Um, we've talked a lot about kind of how your nursing experience and your nursing background like feeds into your coaching and what you do now. What do you think that what would your like piece of advice be for nurses who might be considering a career change, whether that be an interest in coaching or really anything else? What would you encourage them to consider as they kind of look at the potential opportunities ahead?
Read, read, read. And then go to networking events. And I know nurses were so terrible at, you know, tooting our own horn because we're so righteous. And it's a gift, it's a calling. And I respect that. I'm the same way. But what I've learned through being away from the bedside is learning to toot my own horn and doing it in a way that showcases my skills, not, oh, look at me, I'm good at this. It's more
Right.
like I can, this is where I add value to you, is that I am able to do XYZ. And a lot of times with nurses, the only times that I've remembered ever like taking an extra class or anything was when I had to renew my license. And so read, read, read. In whatever area you're trying, your heart is pulling you towards, trust me, all the soft skills that come with nursing are going with you. They're not staying behind. It's not a separate you, it's the same you, just creating another path. And I understand that when you're starting something new, we're terrible at learning. All of us humans, we're not good learners. When we get good at something and then we have to learn again, it's terrifying. It's that whole identity shift. Like, who am I trying to do this thing? Like, I'm a nurse. I went to school for it. I sleep, breathe, eat, being a nurse. But read, read, read. Whatever you're interested in that is taking you away from the bedside, read about it. Number two, networking events. Go to Eventbrite. That's the quickest, easiest way. Whatever you're looking for, look for a networking event. They're generally not expensive. Get dressed. Think about you just go there and just meet people with a similar mindset. I've spent hundreds of dollars on networking events for myself. And do you know how scary that was to go? And they're like, oh my gosh, are you here as a nurse? I said, no, I'm here as an entrepreneur. Oh, you know? And I'm thinking, I spent 300 or some dollars. This thing better give me some value. And it always does. Because
Yes.
the value is not only in what you're learning from whoever has a mic, it's the way you approach people, the way you see people there. And I know nurses are not terribly good at marketing themselves, but please, please, please read, 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 and go to networking events. Just sit there. Hi, my name is this. I'm a nurse. And then you ask other people questions. If you don't want to talk too much,
Right.
people love talking about themselves. Ask them a question.
Yeah.
That is key right there, to be able to create a new sense of an identity that is not so jarring when you start shifting. It's like practice to get into this new person that you want to become.
I think all of that is golden advice. I think that nurses, when we say, I actually love that you said specifically, go to Eventbrite and look for networking events because I think that, we don't have to network as nurses. Like, we just don't,
No,
that's not part of our profession. And it seems so foreign to us, and it seems like this thing that you have to know how to do to start doing it, but it's just talking to people. And so I think that you're so right. Like, this networking feels like a foreign concept. And so I love that you provided the concrete, like, go to this website and find an event and show up and talk to people. Cause that's literally, that's all you have to do. And there's value, like you said, in the people who are at the event, like sharing knowledge. There's generally speakers to do that, but it's just talking with other people. And you can share. I think it's valuable to share like your background, and if you know what you're looking to do, it doesn't even have to be so specific. It can just be like, yeah, I'm a nurse and I am looking for career opportunities away from the bedside. That's enough. Share that with the people you meet. Let them know kind of what you're looking for, and then learn about what they do. And it doesn't even have to be something that you think that you're interested in doing, but listen to the way that people talk about their jobs. Learn the language, because it's just like we have bedside, like medical jargon. There are other words that come with other industries that we're just not familiar with using. And so just learn how other people talk about their jobs. You might even come across a job that you didn't know about that sounds interesting to you. And there is so much value just in a network. Like, if you're job searching and you find a company that has a job available, and it's like, oh, you know what? I met so and so at this last networking event and they work at this company. Reach out to them. Say, hey, it's been a while since we talked, but it was so great meeting you at this event. I just saw this job available at your company. I'm thinking about applying. Do you have an internal referral program? Is a great place to start, because if they do, you've got a foot in the door. So yeah, and then to your other point of just like reading and educating yourself, we live in an age where information is everywhere, and it is easy to access. Like, you don't have to pay for information. I will say, I think that there is value when you're ready to make that step to invest in yourself through, like, whether it's coaching, a digital course, whatever the service is. I think that there's an investment to be made there. But before you're ready to do that, just start reading. Like you said, whether it's, reading on the internet, books, listening to podcasts, there's information out there. So it's great that we live in a day and age where you can just, go learn about something new. So, and then I think that both of those things combined help you then learn how your skills that you've developed at the bedside, how those translate into other things. And then as you learn that, you get better at talking about it, which is another great perk of networking events, is just kind of the practice of your own elevator pitch, the pitch on yourself. So yeah, I think that all of that is fantastic advice.
It's mind blowing, because, like I said, I already have a natural propensity to learn. But then when I started really spending time in audio rooms or Zoom calls, and, just going places and listening to people talk, they're always talking about a podcast, something they've read, and the beauty about that is that everybody gets to share how they receive the information and apply it. So you're not stuck with just this one book or this one podcast or this one person that you follow. You get a variety of the way people see things that helps you realize that you are unique in your own way. There's only one you. There's only one you, and you get to decide who you want to be.
If you'd like to get in contact with Georgette after today's show, you can find her website at www.evolvefulness.com. You can also follow her on Instagram at handle evolvefulness. If you'd like to get a free clarity call to see if she'd be a good match for a wellness coach for you, you can also reach out to her by email at georgettehealthcoach@gmail.com. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to hit subscribe to keep up with our latest episodes. And if you were inspired by today's conversation, I hope you'll share this episode with someone who'd love it just as much as you did. If you're ready to pivot your path, visit the job board at jobs.mypivotpath.com. And if you have any questions or just want to say hi, feel free to email me at audrey@mypivotpath.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.